We are live.
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock and we're live.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Let's call this Tuesday, January 26th, Electric Utility City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Carla Blockson.
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
If everyone would please rise for the pledge, led by the Vice Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, guys and gals. I get to say that finally. Let's get together on our presentations. First, is there any additions, deletions, or reordering?
Not that I've heard of, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we're going to have a presentation from Ed Liberty.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Ed Liberty and his team are online and they're ready to go when you're ready.
I am ready.
All right, good evening, everybody. Ed Liberty, Electric Utility Director. First item that I want to address is just a quick recap and status on the outage that we had of December 26th. Recall that on the day after Christmas, we had an outage which affected thousands of customers. And that outage was quickly determined to be caused by a tree trimmer doing work at a residence at 1029 South G Street. And when that tree came down, the tree limbs came down during the trimming process. It impacted our 26 kV system and in the process took out thousands of customers. It also caused a line a few blocks away at the intersection of Pine and South 12th to fail at one of the connections and come down on the ground. Fortunately, there were no cars and no people at the intersection at the time. We were quite upset about this. We do an awful lot of work to minimize outages, and we certainly, as we all know, there's no shortage of outages that we have to go after. We've been making great strides, but this particular one really upset us and caused us to get rather upset, as well as for a number of you commissioners. This private tree trimmer had not given us any advance notice of the work they were doing, and in the process caused this outage. As a recap, there were 7,135 customers that were affected by this outage. 3,000 of those were affected for as little as 2 minutes, but over 4,000 customers were impacted for as much as 3 hours and 47 minutes. We were very pleased to know that our IVW linemen responded immediately on the scene, as well as additional linemen that dropped what they were doing at home on the day off after Christmas and came right to work to fix the problem. We have since looked closely at the damages that were caused and tallied it all up. The expenses incurred were upwards of about $6,000 to effect these repairs, not including, of course, the inconvenience that was caused by this particular landlord to thousands of customers. So we will be pursuing a claim against them through the insurance company, talking with our HR/risk people and counsel, and advise us the best way to proceed is through a subrogation through the insurance company. So we will be pursuing that. We don't like to see that happen, and we're also visiting or revisiting our policies and practices around tree trimming and what requirements customers may or may not have to give us notice that they're doing this kind of work, because frankly, if we know they're doing it ahead of time, we'd be more than glad to assist to prevent something like this from happening. We want the trees trimmed, particularly when they're close enough to our wires, but not in the manner that was done here, and not in a way that causes thousands of customers to be inconvenienced. So that's the update on that. I'll take any questions if you have them. Otherwise, we'll move right into the evening's presentation.
Yeah, and I just want to have a question for you. I know we've done this before, and I'm just wondering if the process is still ongoing. You know, the couple of minutes is one thing, an hour is one thing, but when it gets extended beyond 3 hours or so, I know that I received some notification from people that were on different life-saving types of devices, breathing devices, you know, all kinds of things of that nature, medications that require refrigeration. Do we keep in electric utility, or maybe city manager, this is a question for you. You know, one of the advantages of being the hometown utility is that we care about our community, if there are people that have special needs like that, do we have a listing of that?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, if I may jump in, yes, we do keep a list, and customers are able to submit their names on that list. It has to be supported by a signature from a physician, I believe. And we do keep a list of people that are medically essential equipment at their property. And system operations has that list, and we do check it. And we do try to get power back as quickly as possible. So some of the outages are caused by switching in order to take things out of service or safe work, try to move customers quickly to alternate circuits, which did take place. Some of these customers are only out between 2 minutes and 52 minutes. That means that they were switched to alternate circuits as much as possible. But at the end of the day, if there's no other way to get power to the house, there's no other way to get power to the house. But to the extent that customers have notified us that they are on medically essential equipment, we do have that in our system, and we do pay very close attention to those circuits first.
Yeah, and to add to that, Madam Mayor, we've coordinated with and identified all the adult living facilities that are in the city,
Right.
in our service area.
That's my next question.
That's your next question. And we have been working with them. There's been some upgrades that they've, installed generators and things, but we do, especially during storm events or power outage seasons, we do make a point of trying to keep an eye on them, because they don't really have necessarily a place to go unless there's a direct hit and they've been evacuated. So staying there without air conditioning or the medical equipment, it's a priority for us as well.
No, I just know that we have a lot of new people that are moving to the city right now, from elsewhere across the country. And I want to know that, can we reach out to them either through our newsletter or online or social media, whatever, to say if you're new to the city and you have these kind of needs, just to bring it to attention so that we have them in our database?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Ed, originally when we had these conversations right after this happened, we did not know who the contractor was. Have we identified the contractor, and are they being held responsible? You'd mentioned insurance, but is it the contractor's insurance? How is it working?
Yeah, we have been unable to identify who the contractor was, but we have identified the owner of the property. And by doing some extensive searches that are available online, publicly available information, tracked down to a specific individual, a specific company behind an LLC that owns that property. We will be pursuing a claim through the city's insurance to that property insurance, and if that's not possible, to the owner of the property themselves.
Okay, so that was my next question. You said we've identified the owner of the property. It's an LLC. Obviously, it's a rental. Has code been out to look at any other issues or anything else that might be a problem on that property? And, have we tagged other properties that they may own? Because we have that ordinance now that allows us to, if there's a problem with one, we look at everything that they may own in the city. For them not to come forward and share with who the contractor is, that makes me think that there's something else going on. So that's concerning to me.
Yeah, we did forward the information to the code side of the house. I know the city manager was involved as well. I'm not in the direct, path back from code on what they've found, if any violations at that property or at other properties that may be owned by this landlord.
Because this isn't something little. I want to make sure that we are doing everything we can, not only to retrieve the funding, anything that it might have cost the city on behalf of the taxpayers, but also make sure that we hold responsible that LLC that, should be stepping up.
Madam Mayor, to the Vice Mayor's question, there was some code investigations and activities. I need to get that. If you are interested in it, I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, because quite often they don't have something as simple as a business license, but what else are they doing that in the long run could be unsafe to either the city or the residents that they may be renting to? Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for asking that question. That was my primary question. My second comment would be to follow up with the mayor's inquiry about folks registering their medical needs. Do we actually, when folks apply for utility service, do we by chance have a little box on there in that process that asks that specific question? So when they actually sign up for utility service, we can ask the question, do you need, special recognition, if you will, or whatever, in case of a power outage?
I'd have to defer to Franco Bolito, our customer service manager. I don't know if that question specifically is asked at the time of opening the account or they're made aware of that, but I'll ask Franco to give us.
It's a much more efficient way than, people having to either know they've got to raise the question or whatever, or our staff, as well as they do in their daily job, sometimes things don't get communicated properly.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
based on the suggestions and input we're getting, we'll go back and review that. I don't believe it is part of the process, but it could easily be attached.
Okay.
We can follow up and make sure we're getting everyone.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, want to continue on, Ed?
Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'm going to share the screen and then introduce Franco Bolito, our customer service manager, to speak to the first item on the agenda with regards to customer payments. And I'm going to go ahead and drive the slideshow while Franco speaks to some of these issues. So Franco, if you're ready, I got the first slide up now.
Okay, so good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. The first slide that we're looking at is the aging report. You've seen this before. Ed has presented this several times. We just wanted to give you a snapshot to show you. We're looking at 2019, 2020, and now comparing it to the most recent data as of January 19th, 2021. So if you look at the bottom, that's the grand total for all utilities, including taxes of the water, sewer, and electric. We were in the 4% aging, which means that most of the accounts are 30 plus days past due. So we went from 4% on average in 2019 and 2020 to now 10.8% in 2021. I'll let Ed add any more to that if you want to add to it.
I'll just add here that these are total utility payments, not just electric. So this would include electric, water, sewer, and any specialty fees associated with garbage pickup, for example.
Right.
This is not just the electric utility. This is combined total for all of those groups.
So now on the second slide, we're just looking specifically at the payment plans that were created during the moratorium. So what we have here is just a snapshot of, as of January 19th, we've got 1,196 total payment plans between residential and commercial customers. There's a breakdown down below of residential payment plans. There's 1,116 of them total, and there's 80 commercial payment plans. And this is where we are. We're tracking every time a payment is made against the payment plan. So as you remember, the commercial payment plan is 24 months and the residential payment plan is 12 months. So far we've got 39% of the payment plans have been paid so far to date as of January 19th. And then we're also tracking customers that are delinquent on their payment plans. And we've got about 32% of the customers that are delinquent. So when they fall behind, we work with them on a case-by-case basis. That's really taking up a lot of my time and my team's time to review their account, make sure we get them in touch or in contact with community action, get them financial assistance, make sure they've applied. So that's really a very laborious and meticulous process, but it's paying off dividends, as you'll see in the next slide, where we are getting some dollars, care dollars from community action. So I don't know if you want to add anything to the slide.
No, we'll just move on to the next one.
Okay, so on this slide, it's showing us the dollars that we've received from Palm Beach County so far. We started tracking this April 1st. We've received $186,000 so far has been paid to City of Lake Worth Beach Utility Department, helping 420 total customers. Now, the maximum assistance received by certain customers, $1,200. The minimum was $52. The average assistance per customer is about $445. And then on this slide, we're taking a look at collections. Obviously, we expected the collections amount. And again, these are customers whose accounts have been finalized and they have left. And so they've left owing a balance. Even after the security deposit on hand has been applied, they still owe the city a balance. So that those files after 60 days are sent to a third-party collection agency, and then they begin their collection process to try to recover some of the outstanding debt. Now, if you take a look, we're showing here the top section 2020, obviously compared to 2019, but we've got a month by month, month over month tracking with no evictions happening during the summer, during moratorium. It was very quiet, very low. As a matter of fact, lower than a little bit lower than last year, some months. And then as soon as October 1st came around and some of the evictions started, or people just started to leave on their own, even without being evicted, the numbers started to spike and climb. So we've got a projected right now, the month of December hasn't come out yet. We expect those numbers to be sent to the agency the end of February. So once we do, we'll update this slide. But we're looking at, about $400,000 for 2020 if we continue with this run rate, compared to $224,000 last year.
Okay.
Ed, did you want to add anything to collections?
Again, just to reinforce it, what Franco said, though, these are accounts that have been closed, meaning the customer is no longer at the premises, is gone, is unable to be contacted. They've either left a formally finally account, or there's nobody there. The vast majority of cases, they just finally the account and left without a final payment. And these are the amounts in arrears. So these are dollars that, particularly on the ones that are related to electric utility, we have procured power and delivered power to the premises and haven't been paid for it. So we have a direct expense associated with it. As with the water department, for example, they procured the water, delivered it, so they have a cost of goods sold that can't be recovered, and that's why it's out for collections. So should those individuals seek to reestablish an account in the city at some point in the future, they would have to clear their outstanding balance. That doesn't happen very, very often. On occasion, it does. To the extent that these are dollars owed by a property owner, they would, of course, be recovered at the time of sale of the property. So that just gives us all a perspective on how much potential cost we have out there that we haven't been able to recover. So that gives you an update on where we are with payment plans and collections. So unless there's any questions, we'll move on to the next portion of the discussion.
Did the delinquent mean no payments at all?
Delinquent means this is the amount that's left over after they've made whatever payments they've made. So the presumption here is that they've made payments for some period of time. The account closed, whatever was on deposit, if there was anything on deposit, was applied to the outstanding balance. And then this is what's left after all other methods of payment are exhausted.
And the connection between the payment plan and delinquency is what? Are people on the plan delinquent? Are they? What are their consequences?
The folks on the payment plan are delinquent. We're working with each one of those as they occur. That becomes an escalation to management within the customer service group, and management within customer service works to work out something with the customer to get some level of payment from the customer as best as they can. So the last thing we want to do is actually disconnect service. So in the vast majority, overwhelming majority of cases, customers make some form of payment and keep the service alive.
Correct.
Is there a need for temporary employment to help you out with? And I know we're increasing expenses and cutting income. Not a good time to hire, but.
Well, a lot of these are able to, I believe, are able to be handled by phone. I'll let Franco get into the details as to whether there's a backlog of phone calls. I don't believe there is, but I'll let Franco speak to that directly.
Yeah, no, Madam Mayor, we are Commissioner
Thanks, Frank.
Robinson, we are trying to handle these as they come in as quickly as possible. So staff has been working overtime. I've got supervisors that are working Saturdays and sometimes Sundays as myself to help these customers get whole. We're trying to get them whole and work with them to make sure that they don't fall off, and we try to get them to stay on the payment plan as much as possible. So it is very exhaustive, and I appreciate your offer to hire additional folks. We're trying to be as prudent and fiscally responsible as we can and do the best that we can with what we have. So we appreciate the thought, but so far we're doing well.
A tremendous job.
They're doing a fantastic job with a lot of compassion that to help these folks as much as we possibly can.
One last question is, once the shut off occurs, how long, what's the contact with the city in a building without utilities?
Well, we continue to try to contact the customer, and it takes some time before the water is actually finalized. The electric could get finalized first, and what's the vast majority, it's very rare to find something where the customer doesn't get the power back on, and we never actually get to the point of disconnecting the water. But Franco can add some more commentary on that too.
Yeah, so today, Madam Mayor, today there is about a 7-day delay between the electric being turned off and the power being disconnected if we haven't heard from the customer. Most customers respond within hours of being shut off for non-pay. So as soon as they contact us, we work with them on getting them restored as quickly as possible. We've got about a 98% restoration rate within 24 hours or less right now.
Great.
So if I'll add to that, it really begs the question, if we're able to work with them, over 98% of them, work with them to get them back on, very, very quickly, they would have done themselves a much bigger favor by calling us ahead of time before the power ever got turned off. But it's unfortunate that so many people just wait till it's turned off to then get in touch with us and work something out. So we'd like them to be more proactive and obviously avoid themselves that inconvenience and the frustration of having.
And my concern was the lag time between the shut off and any contact from the city, either through code and their condition of the building, or to restore power. We wait for them, right?
Correct. Madam Mayor, if I may, that's correct, Commissioner
Yes,
Robinson.
thank you.
We wait for the customer to contact us once they get disconnected first thing in the morning. But I think what you're referring to is the concern that, we disconnect, we shut off someone's power for non-payment and they're not there. How long do we wait until we go to the next step? I think that we saw some of that in October as far as vacant units, and we worked through those. We had our conservation team that did a great job of doing outreach, either phone calls, door hangers, field visits to make sure that the property was not vacant. But I think that's all been cleared up now that we're in January. It's really back to normal. Customer gets shut off for non-payment, first thing in the morning. They're usually reaching out to us within the first hour or two of the morning, and we get them restored right away. So we're not seeing what we had suspected back in October when we first started resuming disconnects.
Thank you.
So can you repeat that last comment there, Franco?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, would you say we're not seeing what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
So there was discussion back in October of disconnecting or shutting off customers' power, and then they remain in the unit without power or water for any length of time. That is not happening any longer. We were monitoring that, since October 1st. We were very proactive to make sure that anyone that got shut off that was not reconnected or restored within 24 hours, we were doing outreach to contact them to make sure that they're not staying in the unit without power or without water. Although we didn't cut the water, we just cut the power. But that is no longer an issue. People that have left have since left. And the people that are there are just, struggling financially, and we're working with them on a case-by-case basis.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Franco.
You're welcome.
Really.
Okay, you guys want the next one? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Vice Mayor had a question before we start.
Franco, so that would apply to commercial businesses too, because at some point we had some bad commercial players in and around G and H Street North. So have we hooked up with code? Are we monitoring to make sure that those businesses are not still working with generators and we had a lot of undocumented businesses. They didn't have business license. We didn't know who they were. Are we comfortable that that's not happening?
Fairly comfortable. Obviously, I'll defer any activity that code is doing. But like I said, we have the outreach team, the conservation team that is conducting outreach on every single customer that gets cut. And they do that twice a day.
Sending those over to code, there's a connection there.
Only if there's no reconnection. So right now, most of the customers that get disconnected in the morning are reconnected by the end of the day. So we don't have any stragglers. And if we do, we begin the outreach program to make sure. And we have very few commercial customers that are shut off and not restored or reconnected.
Okay. And then talk to me about the CARES Act. Do we know how long that's going to carry on as far as helping people?
The last communication we received from Palm Beach County is they just restarted their application, their pool of applications. Was at the beginning of January or the end of December. They had shut down for about a month, and they had just received new funding. So they're back in business. They're receiving applications, they're processing applications. They're sending us commitment letters on a daily basis right now.
Okay. And are we as a city, and this might be a city manager question, are we as a city reaching out to try to recoup some of the loss that we're seeing, or are we just sending it to collections? Because there is funding coming down the pipe to help cities recoup some of the costs. Would that be some of the costs that we can recoup under a pandemic?
Some of these costs didn't qualify under the previous funding packages. We're not really completely sure under what just is being approved, but we have been working with the consultants and staff to keep an eye for any money that we can grab for that purpose, Vice Mayor.
We know when we send it out for collections, we're getting pieces, on behalf of the citizen-owned utility, we're just getting pieces. And then my last question, care to share. Years ago, this dais asked and was looking at the care to share tag on our bill because we weren't quite sure where it was going. And I don't know that we are comfortable where it was going, but I think if at any time, this is a good time to, identify that and make sure that it is being put into a pool to help people pay their utility bills during this pandemic. And I think that if we market it in a way and let people know, I think, there's a lot of people out there that want to help. There's people that are helping their neighbors pay their utility bills and things like that when they can. I think that if we get something on there that says this care to share goes directly to a Lake Worth neighbor that is struggling to pay their utilities, I think that would be a better message at this time.
I also think too, the roundup program, rounding up your bill, especially if people can't afford to do something, but they want to do some, a little bit. If you round up your bill from $289.62 to $290,
yes,
that goes into a pool as well. And then you could have an additional one if somebody has a large sum that might want to.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, if I could, to both of those points, and they're good points. One of the difficulties we have as a public entity and a utility is we aren't very good at, and we don't have the capabilities to make determinations on who's out of this list is deserving over other people, or to review an application process. And that's why we relied a lot on other agencies that actually provide funding, because they work directly with the client from a different aspect. We know them as a resident or a customer in the billing system. We don't know whether or not they technically would qualify as a person just because they come in and say, I need assistance. So it's kind of hard for us to develop that queue. That's why we've been working with the not-for-profits and trying to encourage people that if they know a neighbor, yeah, you can help out.
But we had identified not-for-profits that weren't necessarily connected or had any piece to Lake Worth
Right.
Beach. We know now, and I think Ed has identified some
Sure.
nonprofits that are physically working with our community, whether it's the Guatemalan community or people of color. There's so many different nonprofits now that are working with these people that are already helping them pay their utility bills. So, you know,
I just wanted to clarify that there was
no,
an expectation to call the city that we
no,
were really not.
I absolutely agree with
Thank
you,
you for
but I think we've identified partners now throughout the city that we can
And we have
circle back around and do that.
during COVID, Vice Mayor. That's a good point. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may add to that.
Yes.
We do have some names of nonprofits, and what we need to do, and we're in the process of getting this information together, is to properly vet them. So, for example, a true nonprofit would have documentation from the IRS, for example, as to their status as a nonprofit. We want to make sure that when we bring you a list to approve for addition to the Care to Share program, or to replace somebody who may be on an entity that may be on the list today, is that it's an entity that is truly, as best as we can tell, the city could properly vetted to receive those dollars. So that would include not only their mission, but their status with the IRS. So we'll be putting that together and bringing that to you in a formal, well thought out process. So, but there are some excellent, appear to be excellent groups that have sprung up, representing the best of intentions. And we've also, quite notably had some private individuals, residents in the city, who have made have written some checks that are just tremendous to help their fellow residents in this time of need. So we want to make sure that we have the right place to channel those donations, because as the city manager said, we don't know how to pick, who's worthy of assistance and who's not. And we want to leave that to the charities and to the county agencies that can, do that best. Okay.
Yes, we did.
You're such great people.
Yes, we did.
Okay, shall we move on? Okay.
Okay. So this next portion of the meeting was designed to kind of take a little bit of a retrospective or introspect, if you will, on just what it is that we've gotten done in the past 3 years. And I know that my staff certainly feels this with the pressure that I put on them to do more and better and faster and quicker and bigger and solve a lot of problems. And it's probably healthy at this point to kind of sit back and say, where were we just 3 years ago, and what have we gotten done? Customers may be feeling that in improvement in their service. Hopefully they are. Although I'll candidly say that not every customer has seen. We still have reliability issues, and we have a lot of work to do. But at the same time, we've gotten an awful lot done in the past 3 years. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to walk you through, or some of this, at least a good portion of the next few slides, are documents that we actually used with the bond rating agencies in preparing for the bond issuance that we recently undertook. The next two slides, structural initiatives and operational initiatives, these are actually slides which were put together for us by Davenport and our financial advisors based on information that we provided them with just what we had done. Not only do we want to know how we did, but imagine that rating agencies and potential bondholders, by the way, the bond sale, as you all know, went exceedingly well. They would like to know what, before I put $100 million into city bonds, just what is it that they're going to do with it, and do they have a plan, and what have they accomplished? Are they on the right path? So these next few slides were intended to convey to the investor community and the rating agencies just what it was that we had accomplished, because for many people, their recollection or their knowledge of Lake Worth was a number of years ago, and how this utility was performing, particularly the electric utility. So I'll go through the list and we can talk about each one of those, and there's a lot here. I'll just start at the top left and I'll just zigzag down the list. We developed detailed energy supply cost models, so we get a good understanding of where we are and what our supply of energy was costing us. Believe it or not, we didn't really have a good handle on that. We knew that we paid the bills, Nobody was complaining that we hadn't paid the bill for the wholesale power that we bought, but we didn't have a good understanding of just exactly what we were paying in terms of dollars per megawatt hour and what our gross margins were. Now we have a very good understanding of that. We implemented spending controls. One of the first things we did, probably the one that sparked the most reaction in the workforce, that we eliminated all non-productive overtime. So we assured that, for example, anytime we're working overtime, that there was a clear approval for it, and it was clearly productive, and it was clearly aimed at the mission of improving reliability. We also implemented monthly financial reviews with myself and staff. That meant that we had to actually create the reports to actually conduct the financial reviews on. So we had to create P&Ls, income statements, and understand where we were. So we started doing that. We developed key performance indicators. We created detailed financial monitoring systems, the review process, and some oversight functions as well. We significantly increased spending on activities that improve reliability. So things like tree trimming increased significantly. Simple things like animal guards. You've probably now seen thousands of poles around our electric utility service territory with the black wraps on them. That's to help stop the iguanas and lizards from climbing up the poles and shorting out the system and causing outages. That seems to be working. In regards to staff, we restructured our staff roles and responsibilities. So we didn't wholesale just clean out the staff. We restructured the roles and responsibilities. And a term that I borrowed from a gentleman I worked with many years ago, we gave them the privilege of focus and clear responsibilities. So in restructuring the organization, we went from a classic pyramid to a much flatter organization, not by increasing significantly staff, but by having department heads for each line of business or each area of the business report directly to me rather than through an intermediary. That allowed them to clearly focus in their swim lane and do what they do best, which significantly helped give people just that, I use that term again, privilege of focus on what they do every day. Was clearly in that lane. We significantly improved our wholesale power contracts. So we went out for bid at the time of expiration of the wholesale power contract that was in place a little over 3 years ago, and brought a new contract into place, and not only just brought it into place and put it in a drawer, but we now actively manage that contract. Every week and every month we make nominations for how much power we want to buy for the following months. So if you look at it from a dollars and cents point of view, we've taken our power and reduced it by about $20 a megawatt hour. So that sounds okay, $20 a megawatt hour, what does that mean? Well, that means $9 million a year of savings. So we've saved $9 million a year in our wholesale power costs just by restructuring that contract and actively managing it to get the best value possible every month. And what did we do with that money? We use it to rebuild our fund balances. We use it to address storm damage from hurricanes that came through. And we used it to absorb increases in costs as we were going through life together here. We retain subject matter experts to augment our staff capability, recognizing that in a small organization like ours, with not a lot of turnover in the lower levels of management in the workforce, you don't have the ability to bring in people with tremendous subject matter expertise. It's a homegrown exercise. But by reaching out into the marketplace and strategically bringing in consultants, either new hires or specialty consultants, and also retaining key employees once they retired from the city, having them come back part-time to work in a very narrow area that was their subject matter expertise and assist us. That's brought a lot of benefit to us. The consultants that we brought on board are nationally recognized. They have CVs that speak to national experience, and we're all vetted and have the proper portfolios to be doing the work that they're doing for us. So that was a big improvement. One of the things that was lacking was a clear strategy for our generation assets. The conventional thinking of, gee, they were new 40 years ago, 50 years ago. What do you mean they wore out? Well, I asked many people the question, if you can remember what car you were driving or your parents were driving to work and relying on it every day in 1975, are they still driving that car today? Or are you still driving that car and rely on it every day? I haven't found anybody who said yes to that. So if you're one of those people, you feel free to come forward now. But our generation assets are well beyond end of life, so we needed to have a strategy on where we were going. So we generated our first resource plan together with outside assistance, and it's driven us in the area of heavy investment into power purchase contracts from solar. And as we all know the story, by 2024, 2025, we'll have the lowest carbon footprint of any electric utility in the state of Florida by far. We've made significant improvements. So we've, ahead of what's happening nationally, we've shifted the momentum here from a fossil environment to a rapidly growing solar environment and a significantly decreasing carbon footprint. And we'll lead the state in that effort. So as those units come online.
Excuse me, Ed,
Yes.
your voice is kind of soft when you go through the presentations. I was wondering if you could just raise the volume just a tad and repeat that last statement that you made.
Sure. I was making reference to how much lower our carbon footprint is going to be in 2024, 2025 as our solar resources come online, and that will lead the state dramatically in terms of how much we've lowered our carbon footprint and what our absolute carbon footprint will be in 2024. So that's a big improvement. We also developed. You're welcome. We also developed a multi-year capital investment plan. So you can imagine that if you're going to go out and borrow money, you need to be able to show the investors and the financial community what it is that you're going to do with this money. So we had to develop a multi-year capital improvement plan that really covers the work that we plan to do in the next 5 to 10 years together. It needs to be well thought out, well planned, and it was also vetted by independent engineers who looked at our plan and agreed with the plan and endorsed that plan. So that's a good level of comfort that we've done the right thing. We also had to establish a basis of design for what it was that we were going to build. We didn't have good, solid construction standards for our infrastructure. So imagine that. You look up and see the poles, you see the wires, you see substations, but we didn't have a very coherent, well thought out, recently vetted construction standard. So, and design standard. We now have that. And it's to the extent that it needs to fill some gaps, it's being filled as we now go out for engineering and construction services on what we're going to be building. Reliability indices. It's hard to inspect for what you expect if you don't also have numbers. So we started tracking and publishing reliability standards. So we've done a good job now. We've got numbers, we've got data, and in time, as we continue to improve reliability, the data will show that improvement. As I said earlier, many of our customers are feeling that improvement already. You're probably seeing fewer and fewer outage notifications, but the data will follow to show that we're in fact making those improvements. Getting the message out to our owners and our customers and our stakeholders. We launched the Citizen-Owned Energy, the COE website, the citizenownedergy.com, which is out there more of a good news vehicle. It doesn't replace the operational nature and doesn't replace the city's website and the key things that happen on that website, but it's a way of getting good news out, information to our customers so that they can be proud of what we're achieving and get that message. We also greatly improved the use of our labor contracts, and we improved the pay rates for key people in our organization, particularly our IBW line workers who needed a step up, not in their performance, I mean a step up in how we were compensating. And we had a lot of turnover in that area, and we were losing to people who were paying better. And we're doing a much better job of that. And I thank you for the role you played in negotiations and helping us, do that. And also a thank you for the IBW and working with us. I know we're entering another round of negotiations soon, but we're very pleased with how that worked out and with the level of work, the quality of work, the commitment that they've made to our city as well. As we all know, we've greatly improved our customer service processes. I'll just tick off the list here and things that we did. Added after-hours call center support. Previously, we didn't have that. Now we have an after-hours call center 7 days a week. Greatly expanded hours. For a while, we were at 24 hours a day. Now we're at 12 hours a day. We implemented online outage reporting, which is something we didn't have before. So the more that people report outages online, the less they flood the phone lines, the less wait time there is for somebody who's calling for something that's truly an emergency or may not necessarily be an outage. So we can handle outages quicker by processing those requests online, and that's been working well. New credit card payment processes have worked, and the 7x24 national payment capability that we added with the Pay Near Me function, where 2,500 to 4,000 transactions per month are now happening at a dozen locations that around in and around our service territory outside of normal business hours, which is a much more convenient way for people than trying to get to our offices during working hours to get their bill paid to avoid a weekend disconnect, for example. So we brought them a lot of comfort in that they can make their payment at 7 o'clock on a Friday night at a local location and not have to worry about the power being disconnected. Most recently, we started doing this, and it paid a big dividend once we got into the COVID situation, was 100% remote customer service representative capability. So our customers can now open accounts, close accounts, forward us all the documentation. That's all done by email. They don't need to come to our office in person, stand in line, take a number, take time off from work. It can all be done by phone and email and more rapidly expedite that. So those are the what I call structural initiatives that we undertook in changing how we were doing business as a utility and affecting our performance. Then I got into some what I call operational initiatives, things that we did in operations. So we, just going through that list, we increased preventive maintenance of critical components, whether it was switches, breakers, insulators, substation components. We replaced aged assets that were showing signs of impending failure. We got out there ahead of the failure. Doesn't mean we've solved all these problems by any stretch of the imagination, but we're now attacking things with this perspective. We brought in technology, thermography, the ability to use infrared cameras to identify hotspots in the system and recognize that that's a sign of an impending failure and send the crews to work on that before it fails and causes the outage. Use of AMI, our metering system, to more actively respond to outages quicker, identify imbalances in circuits between A phase, B phase, C phase, and then move customers from phase to phase to have better balancing in our circuits, reduce overloads. We increased vegetation and tree trimming, as we talked about before, and doing the things that we need to do to keep the critters off the poles. We've also used AMI to identify outages. So often we'll see an outage on the AMI system and roll a truck to the scene before the customer has called us. That's a good thing to do. So we're getting there quicker. Aggressive deployment of animal guards, increased troubleshooting line worker staff. So we've added more troubleshooters. These are the folks that are roving the system in a truck, a single person vehicle that's responding after hours or even during the week, business hours, to outage calls. So we have more people on staff there. That also had the benefit of decreasing the vacation backfill. So previously, for example, when one or more of the troubleshooters went on vacation, we had to draw from our daytime regular work week crews to backfill them, which of course then depleted the crews. So by having more troubleshooters, actually increasing the staff, we were able to more closely focus on outage troubleshooting and make service better for our customers. We've greatly engaged with our labor force. Their response for after hours calls when they're at home and the phone rings has been significant. It shows up dramatically in our outage reduction efforts. The outages are shorter because the crews get here quicker. They've done a fantastic job. They deserve a lot of credit for the work that they've done. It's amazing just how quickly they can get here when that phone call comes to their home or to their cell phone. They drop what they're doing, and we've had no issues with getting people here as quickly as we need them. We've also made some control use of overtime to make repairs and return circuits to normal configuration. So what does that mean? So previously, when we had something that was out of its ideal configuration, we might deal with it on Monday or tomorrow. What we're doing now is we're saying, no, we're going to work overtime and we're going to return that device or that circuit or that portion of the system to its normal, reliable configuration as quickly as possible. So we don't want to be sitting there with anything less than N-1 reliability. We want to restore that circuit quickly and not just assume that, well, nothing else will happen between now and Monday. Let's pick this up on Monday. No, we're going to work it Saturday and Sunday if we need to make that repair. We've been converting circuits to higher operating voltages, which significantly reduces the amps on the circuit, which reduces the heating and the overloading on the circuits. So we're getting a lot more power delivered to our customers. And when we do that, we also loop the circuit to improve its reliability. So the customer that has moved to the new operating voltage has a more reliable system, but the system that they vacated on the older, lower voltage is also better off because they left, right? So The older system has less load on it, which brings it closer to its design limits. And the new system is a better way to serve the customer. And over the next few years in Shrip, we'll move even more customers over, and we'll give you some examples in a few minutes of how we've done that. We've also identified, components that may be a problem in one area. So for example, when we look out west, and what do we mean by west? West of Route 95. In that particular area, and many of those systems were built in the 70s and the 80s with shorter insulators, metal brackets, and 26 kV circuit. Well, we've known that those shorter insulators and metal brackets are a problem. So rather than address them one or two at a time as problems occur, what we've said is, no, we're going to go replace them all, and we're going to do it now. So that effort actually began in 2020, using our own in-house crews as we waited for the Shrip funding to come in. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars out west upgrading those systems using our own people and getting after those sources of outages. And we've already seen some significant improvement in outage rates dropping out in that area of the territory. Open wire secondary, got rid of it. What is open wire secondary? That's bare copper wire in backyards or in secondary after it's been stepped down to the utilization voltage. That open wire secondary is a source of many outages due to tree contacts, animal contacts, vegetation contacts. So we're gradually removing all of that and going with insulated wire, removing the old bare wire from the system. Implementation of a 6-day work week. What we've done is we now tend to work Saturdays, many weeks on Saturdays. We bring crews in and they work on capital work. So these are capital projects that will help us improve the system. So while they're here doing capital project work, they're also available to respond to an outage that may occur on a Saturday. So if we have a Saturday where we have an outage,
Ed, can you flip the screen? You're on the first page. You're on the there you go.
Oh, sorry about that.
You're at the bottom now, but this is the second item.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then right at the end of that bottom, we greatly improved our storm response and our recovery processes. So fortunately, we haven't had to do a lot of that, but we've completely changed how we prepare for and respond to storms, largely in getting crews here early, recognizing that we are on a peninsula. And if a storm, a hurricane comes across the peninsula, it's really important for us to have those mutual aid crews here early before the storm, rather than having to wait 2 or 3 days after the storm gets here for them to try to drive here. So it is more expensive, but we'll be able to bring our customers back sooner by having done that. So sorry about being one slide behind, so I'll jump ahead here. This next slide is more background information, just to give people a little perspective. There's been some comments or thoughts in the past that people are leaving Lake Worth. Well, that's an easy comment to throw out there, but the facts don't support that. If we go back to 2013 and the chart on the left, and you look at the graph on the right, we're using electricity. Our customers are using. We have more customers. It's not on this slide, but we're using more electricity each year than we have the prior year. So we continue to grow and grow and grow. It looks like we took a slight dip in 2016 versus 2015. But we also had other issues there, and we got more efficient. We implemented some large energy conservation projects as a city, which would have dropped our consumption a little bit, but it resumed. It went back up as customer counts continue to grow and customers use more and more energy. So this was important for the investor community to see, is that we're not a stagnant, frozen utility. We are in fact growing the amount of energy that we send out to our customers, and we are growing number of customers, and we are growing our revenues without having done rate increases. And we're most importantly, we're growing the bottom line and growing our gross margins. Our peak demand, which is the maximum that we might use at any one time, has gone up as well. But you can see that between 2016 to 2020, certainly 2017 to 2020, it hasn't jumped up by huge amounts like it did in the prior years. So what that tells us is that energy conservation on the part of the customers, buying the more efficient light bulbs, more efficient appliances, insulating homes, replacing windows, renovations of properties, is having an effect in decreasing how much they might use at any one time. But the overall consumption continues to grow, which is good. Let's talk about system hardening and reliability improvement. This was a project that we kicked off together a couple of years ago, And the common perception, perhaps hearing a lot of our own comments, is that we're waiting for the bond money, waiting for the bond money. What we wanted people to understand is that we're not entirely waiting for the bond money. There's a lot of work that we're doing ahead of time. So we talked about system hardening, reliability improvement. We wanted to make sure that our infrastructure is prepared, hardened, and reliable. This was a clear message from this commission a little over 3 years ago when I got here, that this is something that was critically important for you to see done, and we're well underway with this effort. This had to be a system-wide upgrade, not targeted at only certain neighborhoods, but across the entire electric utility. We needed to withstand bigger storms, reduce the amount of vegetation and wildlife triggered outages that we have, and not eliminate them completely, improve reliability, and increase our capacity for commercial and residential growth. So what does that mean? It's hard to grow customers if the wires that you're attaching them to are already overloaded, right? So the conversion to 26 kV is how we're doing that. And looping the projects, the system even more will give us more deliverability of energy that we're going to need. We needed a multi-year capital plan, as we discussed earlier, replacing older poles with newer poles, and not just replacing with a like kind, but making sure that when we touch something, that we're designing it to withstand that Category 5 storm. Adding redundancy, which will greatly improve our ability to respond to outages, such as adding a second tie line. Going to the operating voltages that you get when you increase to a more modern system, in this case 26 kV, and then bringing technology to the marketplace, whether it's the infrared technology, the AMI system, additional equipment that we've installed, are all helping us significantly. A lot of stuff when you look at this and you say, what have we done? Let's narrow in and look at a specific project that we've done, or a group of them. So a lot of numbers here: 26B1, W13, phase 1. What does that mean? We call that West 13. So the West 13 is one of the larger projects that we've undertaken. We've also done what we call a North Loop, phases 1, 2, and 3, and a South Loop, phase 1. I'm going to talk a little bit about those and give you some examples. So the 26 West 13, you all have these. You can certainly look at them online and look at them closer with a magnifying glass. But this is a large circuit with thousands of customers connected to it that is west of Route 95. It has its origins on the eastern part of the lake. It wraps around the lake, goes up Detroit, goes out Lake Worth Road to Engle, and serves parts of the park. And that's just phase 1. We took that project and launched our contractors at it using dollars that we already had, and made some significant improvements. You may have driven by, seen the large concrete poles up and down Lake Worth Road into those neighborhoods, some of the new stuff that was installed, and the old wooden poles that came out. But why the West 13? Why did we pick that? The philosophy is to begin with the poorest performing circuit first. So the poorest performing circuit is the one that got the attention first, and that was this West 13. So it has multiple phases to it. Phase 1 of the West 13 is now complete. So what did we do? 126 poles in that circuit were replaced. 72 of those what we call a Class 1 wood pole, but 54 of them were what we call a KIP 8. Those refer to structural integrity. Those are numbers that have to do with the strength of the pole. We replaced 54 of those. 18 new transformers. We spent about $2.4 million on that effort. Should have had some commas in there and dropped the zeros, but we spent about $2.4 million improving that circuit. What did it do for us? Well, if you look down the list, not only was this the worst performing circuit, it was worse by a lot. So in 2019, outages on this circuit affected a total of 11,235 customers. So 11,235 customers were affected by outages in 2019 on that circuit. After doing this work, spending $2.5 million, that number dropped from 11,000 and change to 1,900. We had 6 trip reclose operations before, we had 5 afterwards, and we had 1 breaker lockout instead of 6. Outage minutes went down significantly. The customer outage minutes, which is the number of minutes which customers actually experienced, and we add up every customer's minutes, that's how these numbers get so high, down by 83%, 18% reduction in outages. We looked even closer since July of 2020, when we were largely complete with this project. This circuit, knock on wood, my hard head, this circuit has not had any breaker operations or lockouts. So a breaker operation or lockout is when the main breaker feeding the entire circuit cycles on off or locks out and will not reclose. That means that thousands of customers would be in the dark. So we have not had any of those. Again, knock on wood. Now, why do I bring up this example? One is because we want people to know that we're doing something. So if you happen to live on and around the West 13th Circuit, you'll probably experience this improvement firsthand. But as we go through our circuits in the SHRIP, these are the types of improvements that we'll be bringing our customers. So it's going to take a few years to go through all of them, but these are the types of improvements you'll see. Picture on the top left, you can see the concrete pole with the much larger insulators, stands off. And if you look very closely, you can't see it there too well, but there's actually some animal guards at the ends of those insulators as well. On the right-hand side is what we call a recloser. What's a recloser? That is a switch that we can operate remotely that is approximately in the middle of the circuit, so that if there's an outage on the circuit, we can open that switch and isolate the area where the outage has occurred and restore the other customers who are not on the failed side of the switch. So we can bring back the customers quicker. This will give you a feel for the order of magnitude, the type of work. These were our contractor crews working with the crane. If you look at the old pole standing there with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sections to it, right? One wooden pole in the corner held together by guy wires holding it up in the corner. Some of the pictures may not show up here. That pole was actually bowed. We installed a new concrete pole and then transferred the service, transferred those circuits, those conductors over to the new pole. Here's a different view. You get a sense of how tricky this work is, working around these devices. All those wires you see hanging looped on the left-hand side, those are grounds. So this circuit was actually de-energized while the crews were doing this work. This happens to be at the corner of Detroit and Lake Worth Road. You can see the size of the crane that it took to set that pole in, and then the wooden poles that'll be coming out. And all those circuits will be transferred over onto that concrete pole, which is going to withstand a Category 5 storm, as opposed to the wooden structures, which will be heavily stressed during a storm. Is a closer picture of the animal guards that go on the ends. So not only have we greatly improved the insulators by having them on these standoffs, but we've also added the animal guards to prevent any unwanted contact should an animal happen to get up there. Phases 2 and 3. So what are we doing next? So phases 2 and 3 are currently at about a 95% design, and we'll start construction by summer of this calendar year, if not earlier. We'll begin construction and you'll see phases 2 and 3 underway. So if you live out on Engle and certainly west in that area, you're going to see more and more construction. So we have undertaken some projects using our own labor. As I talked about earlier, we use our own people to do some of this work. And it's done a number of things for us. Not only does it keep our folks current and have them on the property should we have an emergency, but it also allows us to demonstrate what's actually involved when we get into the large scale projects. So we're learning a lot from what our own people are showing us, the work methods they've determined to be the best, the number of poles, for example, number of customers that we can swap over, and the logistics of how you convert a customer from 4 kV distribution system to a 26 kV distribution system. How do you do that efficiently? How do you do it quickly? And things that when one might not normally think of, for example, how do you notify the customer of when this is going to happen? How do you get the door hangers out there? How do you make the phone calls so they know that, hey, we're going to be without power for a few hours on a certain day because you're being converted to the new system? And then how do we go in and remove the old equipment? So this allowed us to really keep things going while we waited for the bond funds. We've made good use of the time. These next group of projects are ones that some of you have probably seen. We call them conversion projects. This was the North Loop, just north of Lake and Lucerne, towards the eastern side of the city. All of those lines shown in blue are customers' circuits where we converted them from 4 kV to 26 kV. And you see we use the term loop. That means that those circuits now, those customers can be fed from one end or the other. That allows us to increase significantly the availability of power to them, but also the ability to respond more quickly to outages and keep some customers up while we isolate on the more immediate area where the failure may have occurred. Likewise, those customers, by virtue of having left the surrounding 4 kV circuits, relieved load on those 4 kV circuits. So this gives you a little bit more detail. All those blue lines are areas where we converted from 4 kV to 26 kV. And in many cases, we installed new poles, new transformers, installed the animal guards, and this was all designed to a Category 5 storm.
What's the red again, Ed?
The red, I believe, would have been the 4 kV circuits that benefited from the unloading.
Okay, thanks.
So we had 4 kV circuits. I mentioned that were operating outside of the limits, and I won't go through all of the details that thrill all of us engineers, but these happen to be the circuits that we touched, and we typically refer to as the 1801, the 5003, the 1102. These are all things that mean a lot to our system operations folks, but these are circuits that were touched during this process. And again, this was all done by our own crews. We dedicated approximately 25 to 40% of our workforce to do this, including working on Saturdays to do all of this work. We spent about $542,000 on this effort on the North Loop alone. It took about 14 weeks to do this, and we did this without interrupting service to the service territory. And just as important, there were no safety issues and no unplanned outages. We did have planned outages on the day of the final conversion, but no unplanned outages. Phases 2 and 3, we continue. We got 541 customers were converted there. You can see the total number of poles, over 49 poles set, 47 transformers, over 1,800 feet of new conductor was installed. The 336 ACC, that's just a nomenclature for the type of conductor, and 3,000 feet of triplex aluminum. That's the wire that was put in with insulation on the lower levels to get rid of that open wire secondary. So you're looking at over 4,800 feet of new wires were strung, 47 new transformers and 49 new poles. 541 customers benefited from that $540,000 investment directly. South Loop, similar story. You can see the general location now. We're First Avenue South and south from South Dixie over to the water area, down as far south as 5th. That was a $231,000 project. That is in its final stages. That should be done by the end of February, making significant improvements there as well. It involves 3 different circuits. I'm going through these a little bit quicker now. About $230,000 plus ongoing, and again, being done safely. That will benefit about 406 customers directly. And if you can imagine, then it also benefits, again, those customers who are not on the circuit with them anymore. So those loads are relieved as well. In this case, 6,000 feet of new wire, over 77 new poles set by our own crews, and 51 new transformers. Phase 2 of the South Loop is at about 99% design, and that will launch quickly, probably mid-February, as soon as they finish phase 1 of that South Loop. And that'll involve a lot more wire. Well over 7,000 feet of new wire will be going out there. In this case, we'll be using some ductile iron poles in addition to wood poles, 44 transformers moving along. So those are the things that we've been doing with our own people and with contractors. While we've waited for the larger funding, we haven't just been waiting on our thumbs. We've been doing a lot of really good work. One of the emerging concerns that we've identified, and we'll bring this to the table, is in the 1970s, there were portions of the system where feeders cable was deployed in a buried direct, what we call direct buried application, meaning that the conductor was not placed in conduit, it was placed directly in the ground and then covered over with dirt. Not unusual in the industry, but as the industry has learned over the years, is that type of conductor exhibits failures due to failing insulation over its life. So we are past the point where you would expect that to happen, and we're beginning to see it happen. You may remember before I got here, but you dealt with one such failure with GT1 on the power plant property in 2016. We had one recently, East Switch, about 4 or 5 months ago, where one of those feeders failed into East Switch, which is at 2nd Avenue South by the railroad tracks. And then most recently in December, we had a failure of the outlet cable on GT2S5, our combined cycle unit at 138. We know that we've got these direct buried underground cables of similar construction, similar manufacturer and design at many places in the system where these installation failures are going to occur. It's just a matter of time. So we're going to have to address those. Now, since we had planned to rebuild or upgrade all of our substations, these were things that were going to be done anyway. But because of these emergent failures that we're seeing, what we're going to do is we're going to accelerate the project of replacing these underground sections, even though we may not get to a substation for another 2 or 3 or 4 years. We're going to try to jump ahead on at least these underground portions and get those replaced ahead of time. So that'll be a project. We'll find the money within the SHRIP budget, but in the round 1 funding that we're able to achieve, and get after some of this stuff to stay ahead of these failures. Put a picture up here. This was during COVID. We are here for you. This is a group of our line workers here in front of one of our trouble trucks. So that completes the slide presentation, and I'll stop the sharing here. Take any questions you may have. Again, we're not asking for any approvals tonight. Just wanted to give you an update on just what it is that we've been doing and what we got done in the past 3 years together.
Well, it's funny because I'm just thinking of so many of these projects when they began, and also how we asked you to look to how do we utilize our staff in-house to do a lot of these projects, and that had been talked about for so many years. And now to see that we're up to 45% of using our staff, our linemen, our engineering and things of that to do that is really impressive. And I want to encourage you to continue on that, because I know the guys need it. And the linemen and woman, although I think she changed position, right? Is she no longer a line woman?
She still has a certification, and
She's still excuse me. I didn't want to strip her of her title.
No, and she works in our warehouse as a part of the materials management team, and extremely valuable because she knows the equipment and she knows the workforce, and she's got a great a relationship with the workforce, and she knows what they need and why they need it quickly and how to get to it quickly. So she's done a fantastic job.
When we get through this COVID, tell her I'm taking her to lunch, because I know what it's like to be around a bunch of boys all the time. Not anymore.
She does a great job, and she's also she very, very well spoken. I know she had the chance to meet our newest commissioner, and we're very proud of the work she does. And
well, I'm proud of all my team, and I saw that loop project go up myself, and just watched in amazement, seeing those old beaten up poles coming down and the new ones going up, and the black bands that sort of look like, is that the rodent things again?
Iguana protector.
Yes, yeah, that's intended to prevent the climbers from getting up the poles. So we're wrapping at 2 spots down low, and then we're wrapping in a 3rd spot between the communication wires, which are either AT&T or Cablevision, and where what we call the power space. So in that space between the power conductors and the communication space, we're putting an additional wrap up there, and we've done a few thousand poles already, and we'll keep going. We're using both our own people when they do work on a pole. They've been asked to do the wraps. We also have our vegetation contractors who are doing the tree trimming and the alley mowing. We have them doing wraps as well, but when we don't ask them to do any wraps that are anywhere near the live conductors, they only do the lower wraps. We reserve the ones up high for only people who are trained to work near energized equipment.
It's sort of like the serious version of my husband putting lard on the feeder pole. Keep the squirrels off.
Yeah.
I got a video of that. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. It's
Vice Mayor.
And just real quick, thank you, and thank all your people for us. Real quick, I know that we have new contracts with the providers like AT&T and these other providers that share our poles. How is that working out now? Is that a better working situation, or are we still tweaking that?
It's a greatly improved working situation. To their credit, we did not have the best of relationships. I know Paul's face just popped up on the screen. I give a lot of credit to Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Who has worked peer-to-peer with his counterparts. and has done an excellent job of building that relationship. It doesn't mean that we're always going to get what we want done as quickly as we want it done, but we know that we have that avenue of communication, and we also have mechanisms within the contract to do it ourselves and bill them for it. But we haven't had to do that yet, but it's a greatly improved relationship. And the revenues that we're getting for that service are much more appropriate now. And we're seeing those benefits as well.
And I want to thank Paul and the rest of the staff because, you know, sitting on the board for the Palm Beach County League of Cities, it's not unique to us. All the cities have some of the same issues, but they don't necessarily own their utilities. So we have a little bit more negotiation wiggle room, so to speak, where other cities don't. So I want to thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Bloxon?
When will we get to the residents that are on the west side of the city as far as their phase 3 or the loop project for the residents on the west side?
Well, the biggest one is the West 13 Circuit, Commissioner, and that will be starting by summer. The next phases of the West 13 project will begin. I've been told it could be as early as April or May, so I'm just, you know, hedging my bets there a little bit, saying by summer. But we're getting those prices in from those contractors, and then they'll mobilize and begin that work. And it all has to be staged. There's a lot that goes into it, not just getting the contractor here, but the work that Paul Nicholas and our procurement department are doing, Valentina, particularly in getting the materials here, so that when that contractor crew gets here with, you know, 4, 5, 6 crews, you know, a dozen to 20 or so people working, that they've got the poles, they've got the wires, they got the insulators, they got the brackets, and the MOT, the maintenance of traffic, has been arranged, things like that. So a lot to be done to get that army to move. It takes a lot of logistics to have everything ready for them.
Commissioner Robinson, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner, you're on.
You're on mute.
I see his hands moving.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to, we should all, every citizen, all of us should be very proud of our utility staff from the, you know, the top down. You didn't mention morale. It's hard to do the data on morale, but I'm sure with all the fairness you've increased, the morale is very important, and it shows in the work and productivity. Thank you, really.
You're welcome. And let me address morale. You know, no doubt, undeniable. You all felt that, you know, that
Yes.
some of the things that I did, wheels that I put in motion when I first got here, were not well received. But with the refocus and that was something that needed to be done to build the stage for what we need to do together. So we've achieved a win-win, and I hope if they're listening that there's a sincerity here, that we are, you know, firmly behind our IBW and PMSA and PEU workforce. We value them greatly, and we sought win-win, and we've achieved a win-win, and we're building a much better system. And the jobs have been held. We've actually grown some of the workforce. And there's a lot of work coming. Now, not all of it can be done by our own people. We're going to need contractors to come in to help us, but our own people are staying here to operate and maintain the system. And I think a lot has to be said too for the very firm position that this commission took in terms of what we want to do with this utility, that you're supporting the investment, you're giving them the investment. You know, while obviously we all like the work, we don't enjoy the frustration of constantly fixing things that break. But being able to install things and look back and say it is now fixed and customers have a better system, that makes the workforce, not just me, but the folks that are out there climbing those poles and responding in inclement weather, it makes them feel better too, and they feel good about that.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate that. City Manager, did you have
anything? I'd just like to say, having the privilege of having been here now, coming up on 9 years and working with the organization and with this leadership team, the commission there, you know, the significant amount of infrastructure improvements and dollars that have been put into this city in the millions into the fundamentals of the things that really make a city work, that really impact positively the quality of people's lives in the city, the things that impact people's safety, whether it's, street lights or how they move about their neighborhoods safely. Y'all have consistently put your money where your mouth is. And most recently, and I've had the great fortune of being able to find a leader like Ed to bring into the organization with the experience and the ability to manage and to create a culture of caring and performance and excellence, that you're seeing the results of that, and that you've also understood the need for major capital investment and improvement into this infrastructure. Not everybody completely understands that when you talk about the electric utility and the infrastructure needs, but it also was benignly neglected, for 40 years. And we're doing a lot of catch up, which is impacting your outages, your costs and everything. And what's so important is all these pieces of the city that you're responsible for, and now with the electric really coming into its own as hopefully a brand, it's helping make this city sustainable, because the electric utility not only provides a much needed service, a green progressive energy for our owners. You don't have to go out and necessarily put solar panels in your house. You get it when you turn on your light switch and you own it. But your utility also supports the lacking side of the tax base. And as you grow your tax base and you see the infill and the infrastructure attracts that infill redevelopment and people moving into the city, you now have, a utility that is also paying for parks, public safety and quality of life issues. It all blends together. And as you make decisions that you've been going on this track, you're making the city financially sustainable for the future. And that leads to paying for programmings and other things, programs that you want to do in this city for the residents, and the residents want need. As a person you look to try to find that balance and to keep things moving in the direction. I am so very proud of the work and the investment of this team at the electric utility and the staff under Ed's leadership. It has been a joy to watch the turnaround and the transformation, but I can't thank you enough for following through on a promise I kind of made to Ed when he lured him into the city of Lake Worth Beach to be the electric utility director, and that was the funding of these needs to bring this important part of our city up to speed. So kudos to you, Mayor, and the commission for recognizing that. And again, Ed and your team and the leadership team at the electric utility and your workers, just incredible work, and keep up the good work. There's great things coming, more great things coming. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right. Oh, sorry, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you very much. I'll try not to repeat much of what the city manager has said, but I want to fill in a couple of blanks. And that is, Ed, first of all, thank you again to your team. You guys rock. And Mike, thank you for, helping put that team together. I reflect back on the day when I used to try to go out into the community and have town hall meetings to explain to everybody, how much of an albatross the electric utility was in terms of cost to the residents and all the negative sides of what we were doing. And I remember the pushback that I got from the administration and from the elected officials at that time. There was the assertion that I was making these things up, that it was just, a paper tiger, whatever the case may be. But, when you came on board, you clearly understood the message that the commission at the time laid out for you, that we had to turn this legacy liability into a positive, and then turn that positive into an attraction, if you will. So we're no longer it's no longer considered necessarily a liability to move it to Lake Worth Beach because of our utility costs. We still need to do a little bit better job on getting the word out and work in our realtor communities to let them know what we've been doing. But the reliability, like you said, the infrastructure upgrades. I remember how many years we went through that conversation about selling the utility. There's no way we're going to sell this utility. It's turned into a gold mine. It's gone from a coal mine to a gold mine. Okay, so again, thank you all very much. And I really think maybe the town hall meetings we need to have now with respect to the utilities need to be that of basically saying what you laid out there, city manager, and bring some handouts for the residents to see, and to see where we were, to see where we are, and to see where we're going. And to be able to do all of this, and on top of that, the green component, to position ourselves to be number one in the state as far as our carbon footprint is concerned.
2024 is the target.
And that's not too far off. And, you know, I don't even know where that ranks in the nation, but I got to believe it's way up there. So
Top.
it's just amazing. It's been a little bit, there's been some bumps in the road over these years, but we're starting to see, if you don't mind me borrowing Dr. Alonso's analogy, some light at the tunnel. It's not a train. So again, thank you, Ed. Thank you, city manager, and thank you, commissioners, for sticking with this for all this time and positioning ourselves to do some really good things going forward.
Thank you. All right, folks. Public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Do we have any?
No, there are no comments this evening, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, City Clerk. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Robinson? Aye. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Who did
Mayor.
the second, Madam Mayor?
That was Commissioner Bloxton.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
And mark your phone.
Nice, sleep
And I will text you.